ladies and gentlemen. It is 1:02 p.m. in the great Kitsap County, Washington State. It's 51 degrees. So glad that you can join us. As you know, what time is it? It's the most human hour of your week. It is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. It is episode 110, and today we're going to get into the belief that we believe that it is time to talk about belief systems and how they affect us for good or ill. But we can't have a conversation unless there's someone to talk to. And so, who are we going to talk to? The hostess with the mostest, Mark Boatwright Frost, everyone. Let me go ahead and hit him with the horn, hit him with the horn, and bring him on up.
I think you just said it, told everybody out there that I'm a horny boy.
Well, it's the first of the month.
Yes, it is, and it was April Fool's. By the way, my Facebook banner on my personal page talks about April 1st in the way that I think of it, which is it was All Fool's Day.
All Fool's Day.
Yeah, it's not April Fool's Day; it is All Fool's Day, and in mythology, or not mythology, but in the Middle Ages. Fools, the king and everybody else had to accept the fools into their household and into their grounds because they had to feel humble, and the fools were about making them feel humble, which is what the jester's role really was too. But on April 1st, it was the All Fools Day, and there was a fool's parade, and there still is a fool's parade in San Francisco every year. So and it's about accepting being humble. Because people can make fun of you, they can prank you and do all these things to keep you humble from being too full of yourself. And this went all the way up to the monarchs and the kings of the land.
I wonder why they felt like that was important.
Because kings can be full of themselves and do really dumb things. I mean, it's this kind of like way of keeping things real. Which is the role of the court jester, by the way, was to keep things real and to keep the king's head from outgrowing its crown.
Gotcha. Okay.
And be a reminder that you have a responsibility to the people who you are responsible for.
Gotcha. I think that would be scary. It's like, all right, we're going to make fun of the king today. It's like, all right, it's all good. And then the next day, yeah, I don't really like that. Off with it. Well, thank you for that nugget of information. We like that. I love learning those things. Like, why do we do that? Where did this saying come from?
Yeah, and it predates a lot of the things we celebrate today. So yeah, let's rock and roll today.
I like it.
I believe it's time.
All right.
So I'm going to challenge you right off the bat.
Uh-oh. Go ahead.
I want you to think about this for a minute. What is a belief system that you hold that you are starting to feel may not serve you well? Something that you have believed for a while, but the data you're getting today doesn't seem to match your belief system, and it may cause you to reevaluate it.
Okay. First off, that's a mind-blowing question. There are a lot of things. Wow, where's a safe guardrail to go on?
On this show, you're asking that question?
I could go from extraterrestrial life to religion, which we're going to kind of steer away from here. But even in my own faith, there are things that I question and wonder about and want more information about. Religion would be another one. These are all really third rail things. Let's see. COVID was one. How I felt about that, and getting more information and changing my perspective on that, and then changing back a little bit. I was definitely not an anti-vaxxer, but I was one of those ones who felt the vaccine was made really quickly and didn't really have the faith in it. but I had to trust my doctors. And shout out to Dr. Gilmore of Kitsap Public Health. He was coming on to the conduit and educating us and whatnot. And at the end of the day, because of the core comorbidities that I had, it made sense for me and my doctor for me to get vaccinated. And so even still today, I still feel a way about it. If I had it to do again, it might be a tough one. However, um, we didn't know what we didn't know back then, right? And now
Yeah.
the information is a lot different. So I think that would be an easy one that I think everyone can kind of relate to, whether you were
And
for it right in the beginning or not. You kind of.
so let's talk about that a little bit because that's a really interesting one. I think you guided that one pretty well.
Mhm.
Um, I did a deep dive into it and I got vaccinated. But got a lot of pushback from people that says, that was not my choice, and I wanted to say this is why it was my choice. But I want to talk about why I would have considered not getting vaccinated, and I can understand where the issues were. Excuse me, let's say it's driving me nuts. Um, where the issues were with people. Healthcare in our country is a crap show. It's a shit show.
Mhm.
Um, the for-profit model that we use, and you've all heard me rattle on about capitalism and everything else, so we won't go there. But the for-profit model does not suit healthcare well because decisions are made about money as opposed to decisions made about your health. And that is one area that I will adamantly argue for a long time about why this is happening. And the whole issue with COVID was we have lost a lot of faith in the pharmaceutical companies because of their for-profit models and the things we hear we see in the news. I don't remember what the guy's name was exactly, but it was the guy who bought shares in a diabetes medicine and then jacked the price up to $700 a shot because
Wow.
he could. He's now
Mhm.
in jail, and that has gone back to the other way. And there's now a whole lot of stuff about allergy medicines and everything else that have been profiteering on. And we can talk about commodities markets and everything else, which is the model that's being used here. But when COVID vaccine came out, I immediately stepped back and went, wait a minute. This is coming out really fast, but we have a really serious situation here. And I have a deep seated distrust for pharmaceutical companies. And I think a lot of people, when they look at their belief about medicine and their belief about the COVID vaccine, it stems from a deep rooted distrust of the medical system because it has not served us well in the last decade or two
Mhm.
or four. And the pharmaceutical industry seems to be shoving more and more meds down us instead of us dealing with healing and health in general. And that sets a very bad precedent for us to trust. And I think that's a lot of the reason that it challenges my belief system. Now, I went ahead and got it. Some of the research that I did after you dug through the initial BS from both sides came out to the fact that they were already working on a variant of this for a different um, disease, a different situation that had a lot of tie-over pieces. So they had a lot of work already done. So it came out relatively quickly, and yes, there's a huge risk with that.
Mhm.
But so far, I have not grown a third arm out of my chest, and I have not glowed green yet. But it's been a couple of years, 3 years now.
Right, but there have been a lot of especially young, able-bodied, normally healthy folks that have died or have these heart problems due to the vaccine and the booster. And I don't think it serves us any good. Like a lot of mistakes were made through the Trump presidency and into Biden's. And the best way to get the trust of the people back to me is to say, hey, you know what? We effed up, right? We were caught flat-footed. We did what we thought was right. Uh, of course, there's self-servingness and angles and all those things on both sides. But going forward, hey, we're gonna lay it out plain. This is what it is. This is what's going on. You know, if these things are actually affecting people, we're going to acknowledge it. We're not going to try to squash people. Because I run a podcast, there were things that you could not say, right? We're saying the word COVID. There are still podcasters that won't say COVID, or they'll say C-19 or the bug or the beer bug, right? Because you would get destroyed in the algorithm and you wouldn't be pushed out, right? And
Right.
so, though that's very dangerous, and I think we need a space for that. And what we're saying is, well, the American people, or globally, people are too stupid to be able to decipher through what's fact or fiction, and they can't look at the other side. That's a whole nother conversation, but it does
Yeah.
add to
The,
what do
the,
you
the, the
what do
look on my face was not disagreeing with you.
you mhm.
It was adding to it. People believe they're too stupid. And, you know, I know you know this, but I don't know that the audience knows that I do an enormous amount of research. And I am extraordinarily good at getting to source material. But every day it gets a little bit harder. And it is my belief that there are corporate teams, because it's a very small investment to make,
Mhm.
that spend their time online burying things by piling up, not by removing them or anything else, but by just flowing so much garbage out on any site that you have to dig through the garbage that they're paying to have up to the top before you can actually find anything meaningful or resourceful. Trying to find a study on any given subject that actually cites fact, has all of the science behind it, and everything else. Well, on average, a year ago would have taken me, no, actually, 5 years ago would have taken me less than an hour to do.
Mhm.
Now I'm looking at spending an entire day researching to find studies that will actually give you the pros and cons and look at real science and real data.
Well, and they'll also bury actual studies that have been done that didn't produce the results that they were expecting.
Right.
So
And
you have that too.
yeah, you do. The point is to keep information from the people. So are we stupid? Are we ignorant? Which is, I think, more the truth, because there are a lot of people that don't know how to. I've spent the last 2 decades learning how to do this.
Mhm.
Actually, closer to 3 decades learning how to do this, to find real data and real information, so that I could actually start parsing together information for plans to address things and information to address things. But it was a long learning curve, and there were no classes in how to find something on Google and doing advanced searches and finding real things, especially since it kept changing and more became more and more difficult to use.
Well,
So
what's fascinating about this conversation is I could have also answered this, uh, what has, changed about my belief system, which would be mainstream media, right? A lot of folks uh, have known for a while, right? And I'll speak from my experience and also speak from the experience of the Black community, right? Where for a long time, news would portray Black people in a very negative light, right? And so we were saying this is what's happening for decades and decades and decades. Now we look at Trump comes to rise and it's fake news, fake news, fake news. And you have those on the right that are like, yeah, it's fake news. You can't believe that. And it's like, well, we've been saying that the whole time on certain things. And now the left is also pushing back on the other side of that. And we've talked about this ad nauseum on this show about trying to find a reputable news source. And the social contract is broken when ABC and NBC and the big conglomerates that we depend on for our news, New York Times, Washington Post, whatever, have slowly, gone over to the left or to the right and now give us these biased, you
yeah,
know,
I have to
news
share. I have to share this.
stories.
I got an article that I kind of wanted to read that was in the New York Times, and the minute I opened the article, it says, "We want you to pay X amount to see this article and stuff. We are an independent news organization," and I'm like, "When the hell you are?"
Yeah.
Not for decades, you haven't been.
Right.
And so, that's my belief is right there, that I think that the media system's broken. But let's talk about who owns ABC. ABC is owned by Disney.
Yeah, well, it's
It's
problematic.
a corporation. Who
Yeah.
owns NBC? Who owns CBS? CBS is owned by Paramount, but what's their parent company? And I can't tell you right now. At one point, I know that Bill Cosby owned one of them. I think it might have been NBC.
I don't think
Um,
I think they nixed the purchase. He was trying to.
okay, so I knew that was going on at one point, and I can't say that I actually believe that happened because I can't remember it, and I don't have any source data. So thank you for clarifying that.
Mhm.
And I'm mirroring the point that something I may or may not have believed should be looked at frequently and measured against reality. Because, to be honest, in the heart of the whole thing, belief systems can hold you back. Belief systems can stop you from progressing, they can stop you from learning. And you need to be reviewing those all of the time to determine if they actually meet your needs, are serving you, or are blocking you from being what you need to be.
But think of how difficult that is, in the days of Walter Cronkite, for those of us that can remember such names, Barbara Walters when she was, before The View, right? Uh, these are trusted
Dan
people.
Rather.
Dan Rather, right? Trusted people in the community that you're taking the news from, and you believe that it's an unfettered, unbiased presentation of the facts, right? And then slowly that has morphed and mutated into something that we don't recognize.
Infotainment.
But it's so slow that you're just going along for the ride and you don't realize now you're being fed and you're also being programmed to think things that aren't true.
And actually you're programmed to believe in the untruths and defend them irrationally to other people because
Yeah.
you've bought in and taken a side.
But that person is trusted. My father trusted that person. My mother trusted that person. Steve Poole, rest in peace, just passed away. He's been a weatherman in the state of Washington, a staple for what, 40 years?
I have been saying for 3 days now, I am convinced that weather people are using the 8 ball and turning it over to see what the answer is for the day. It's a little thing goes around and floats to the
Yeah,
surface.
yeah.
The future is uncertain today. Try again later.
But a very
Yeah.
trusted, news source that we come to believe. And then they would do special interest stories and get to know them a little bit more, and they'd go and do a museum piece or yada yada yada. Right? That's trusted. That's who my mom grew up with. That's who my grandmother grew up with. I trust that. The information starts to slide, and I can't. I just go along, right? And I will fight you tooth and nail because that is the truth. That's the gospel. And so
But
it is ignorance, just to put a capstone on it. Not people aren't stupid. They're ignorant in the fact that they don't know, right? And they're trusting of who has been giving them those facts, and there's just not time to investigate everything.
no, and this is the game that gets played. It's like, if this is true and you believe this also is true. And it
Ooh,
starts moving you down a path of, well, if these two things are true, then this is also true. And then
yeah.
suddenly you believe that Martians have landed and invaded and that Joe Biden has been possessed by the devil.
No, I don't think it's even that far. I think what's more dangerous about it is we can't have divergent thought. So
No.
whether it's wherever you come down on abortion, for or against, and then how you come down on the unhoused, all of a sudden, if you don't think the same way I do for both, then you must be canceled and you are another and you're the enemy, right? We can't diverge there.
No, we can't have it has come to the point where right, left don't mean anything. It's whether you can think or whether you can't.
Mhm.
And the people who can think are able to sit down and have a reasonable dialogue, even if they disagree on things, and find common ground. The other people are too busy canceling people, and that's a great tool of culture to keep change from happening.
It's also a tool for those who are unpowered to feel like they have a sense of power, right? Being tried in the court of public opinion. is very powerful when I've got Twitter and Facebook and I can, yeah, guilty, not guilty, off with his head, right? That gives me some power in a society where I feel powerless otherwise. And when we watch those folks go down, we feel like we had a part to play in it, which is
Yeah.
also very dangerous because the eye of Sauron could point towards you at any moment.
Yeah, and basically by doing that, going down that path, you prevent any positive change that can come to your own life. You're so willing to be in a fight about something that you're missing the cooperation is a better way to go. And it
Well,
improves everybody's lives.
and it makes you a hypocrite, right? Because
Mhm.
then the converse happens with the person that you're supporting, and it's like, well, wait a minute. Well, if he did this and he was supposed to be canceled, and now your guy has a history of doing this, now you're making excuses.
Mhm.
So now it's, well, you know what? Don't tell me anything about this guy because you didn't clean up your own house. And even if I think what's happening is wrong, I've got to hold my ground because you didn't acquiesce. And then we're just here to stalemate. And now all
And we're
moral
back to and we're
morality,
back to competing and fighting and not cooperating.
facts.
And cooperating is how we get out of this mess.
Ooh.
Isn't that a terrifying idea?
No, I like it actually.
Yeah, and it's learning to cooperate even if you don't agree on something. There's something you can't agree on. So Marwan and I don't agree. I don't think we actually have an area that we don't. I mean, we are very different in our religious approaches. We
Mhm.
are very. I'm far left of you on social issues, but I call myself a humanist, not a socialist,
Mhm.
because I think we need to support humanity because that's what we all are. And I think that trumps almost everything else. And that was not a political statement. That was a trump card being played in cards.
Well, but if you're a humanist, then what am I if I'm on the opposite strain?
You're also human and a humanist, but probably not as far left. People would not consider you as far left as I am.
What would they?
But that's an outside. That's an outside. I think of myself as a centrist. I'm
Mhm.
saying from an outside perspective, most people find me far left.
You're far left.
And
So
I think of myself as a centrist.
you think of yourself as a centrist?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
And in the expense of humanity and the way we look at things, I
Mhm.
am probably more centrist than I had a guy I knew in high school who said people should all just be killed because the planet will do better without us. I consider him far out beyond me. I tend to be more center. I think that it's a transition, not a light switch. You've heard me say this again and again and again. There's a
Mhm.
lot of people that think along the same lines I do. They think that we need to switch now, and I'm like going, well, that doesn't work. Let's talk about how we transition and how we have everyone's voice in the process of transitioning by bringing their puzzle pieces to the table so we can see how we get the best output for everybody,
So
or new people.
I'm super interested. If you consider yourself a centrist, what do you consider me?
I don't. I don't tend to label people or judge people.
Well,
I think that you have places that you are pretty fixed
mhm,
in your positioning, and but
as most people
and yet
are.
and yet we still have conversations about where we can go.
Mhm.
And I don't tend to judge. Um,
I'm gonna hit you with the womp womp button there, buddy. We all judge. It just is what it is.
I don't tend to. I try really hard not to. But there's an occasional "what an idiot" coming out of my head. But it's hard for me to judge. It's hard for me to justify judging without calling myself on it because everything somebody else has done, I've also done. When I
So
see an
again,
idiot on the
I
when I see
don't
the
want
idiot
you to
driver
take
on the
from this.
road doing stupid stuff, I'll
I
guarantee
don't
you
want you
I've
to
done
steal
it.
from this. I wanna have the hard conversation, right?
Okay.
If you see yourself as a centrist, what do you see me as? Right? If you can acknowledge that for those that would see you would say that you're progressive and you're far left
I'm
than I
far.
am.
I'm by most people's standards, I'm far left of progressives. If and I will answer your question. Let me just
Okay,
paraphrase this a little, or set a ground for it.
go ahead.
In our country, Democrats are center right. in America, by the worldview, Democrats are considered center right.
Okay,
They
you
tend
got
to
my
be
attention.
conservatives.
Okay.
Progressives are center. By European standards, progressives are center right as well in this country. European progressives are far, far left of our progressives. So when you look at it in a world view of understanding that in Europe, our progressives would be looked at as, center, but a little bit right compared to let's say France or Germany or other places. And the where they have socialized medicine, universal health care. They have work weeks that are more humane, more focused on humanity. In Europe and a lot of other countries, that is we are looked at as conservative right here. I am more European in my looking, and I'm probably more European centrist in my looking on how things go. If I'm thinking about if I want to have a light switch solution, then I go farther left, but I don't. I'm looking about that. Now, where do I think you're at? I
Wait,
think
hold
you're.
on. Before you
I,
answer, let me
oh,
let me interject there because
I,
you
I,
brought
thought
it.
you want, I thought you wanted me to answer that question.
I do, but you brought in a global piece, and you're saying that they're more progressive from
In general, than we are.
but then how do you explain, France and the UK that still colonize and pillage and plunder, the African continent for minerals and
Today,
fair trade, right?
today they are more progressive, and they don't do that anymore.
What? Bullshit. Bullshit, Mark.
Okay.
I'm gonna drop an F-bomb in here. I like that, and that's one of the things. It was interesting that you brought up looking at it from a Eurocentric global view.
Yeah, and by the way, I did not mention Britain in that.
Oh, I don't care who it is.
Okay.
Right? Even America, our cell phones and all the things that we love, we're dumping. We talk about recycling and whatnot, or most of that stuff ends up on the
Oh, that's
continent.
what you're talking about. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood what you were talking about.
Yeah, that's
When,
what I
when,
mean.
when
So
you're talking about when you're talking
they're
about
more
Africa,
progressive.
when you're talking about Africa, I wasn't understanding that part of what you're talking about, the waste issue and
Yeah,
and what's going on.
pillaging our
Okay,
minerals and things like that on the continent, right?
right.
It's like, but they're more progressive than the United States. Like, I
Socially,
guess
okay.
it would
So
be
we
fair to
we,
say
we
that
have to.
what it is.
Yes,
Like, holy
yes,
crap!
but let's separate out the two.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
so they are progressive, social, political. But corporations are still doing what corporations do, and they get away with a lot of that through the European franchise too. But Europe's starting to hold them a little bit more accountable because they're starting to tax them for waste products, and which are things we won't even talk about in the United States. That's verboten here. We can't talk about taxing corporations and letting and stopping them from externalizing their resource usage and waste products. But it still happens in Europe, except they're starting to regulate that more and more. And when you start looking at to use an example that is there, you start looking at the European regulations of privacy and how much hell that's caused for the social media companies because they demand real privacy for the people there. We don't require that. They do, and lawsuits against the social media companies and the tech companies have been going down one right after the other because of their violations of privacy and their resource uses. I think Apple just got hammered in Europe.
I was
But we
reading.
have to separate government and social progress in governmental terms and corporate abuse.
And I think you have just challenged me. I'm just putting that in the chat here. I said, Mark has now challenged me to show how European countries are still taking advantage of the African continent. So be prepared, everyone. I'm taking this as a personal challenge. I'm going to do a series and talk about what's happening on the continent today as far as current events. It's one of the things.
Start with lithium ion in the Congo.
Yeah, it's things we don't talk about, right? And there's the world is big, right? There's a lot of things that are going on, but we don't know about it because again, we don't have a fair distribution of news that comes into us. So, all right. So back to that. I always got to push back on those things. But it's also interesting, right?
Mhm.
Is why did you pull European countries? Is it because we're so close in how we are, America and European countries, versus making a comparison to, let's say,
Asia.
China or India?
We're closer in parity in our social status. India, China are still they're less human focused, and I mean we talk about human rights. We talk about human rights, and we challenge China and India about their human rights challenge. We don't challenge France and Italy about their human rights because they're ahead of us. It would
Oh, we
make us
should.
look. We could, but it would make us look silly, and
Right.
we'd have to hold a mirror up to ourselves, and we
Oh, no,
don't
no.
like holding up a mirror.
Oh yeah, you're right. We should, and that's kind of hard, right? It's like, well, he
Well,
who is without
okay,
sin, throw the
I,
first stone.
I am going to throw this in here now, and now we're back to talking about belief systems because the
Yes.
way you challenge belief systems is holding a mirror up and looking at your own BS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is hard because if you do that in front of other people, then you acknowledge that you know what you're doing. You're no longer ignorant or stupid, and now you're willingly doing it. And then, are you going to change your behavior? So I think that's why a lot of people won't take a look at it because, like, okay, everyone, I know better now, so I need to stop, or something should happen to me, and there should be some consequence. But okay, so now let's digress all the way back in. Where do you see me?
I think you're center right.
You think I'm center right?
A
Really?
little bit. I think that you are. I don't think politically, essentially, you are center right. I don't think you align with what. I think you align a lot with what the Democrats say they believe, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you align a lot with what they actually do.
Yes, that is very true.
Um, on some stances, you hold significantly more conservative beliefs than I do.
Mm-hmm.
We disagree on capitalism, and
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. Again, I don't think that we should, tear capitalism down and throw some other model up. I think that we need to transition away from it because I personally don't think it's working, and I think that we need to start transitioning to something that does work. And I think capitalism will be a big part of that for a while. And where we go in the future, well, that's open to debate. Again, we need to bring puzzle pieces in and get people talking to each other. But people's beliefs, I'm going to sidestep for just a second.
Yeah.
People's belief systems are that somebody else is going to take care of it for you. And I need to challenge you all on that belief system because it is false on every level. No historical standard has ever supported it. And yet we hold on to that like it's the savior of all of us, that someone's going to save us. Take a real look at your politicians. Come on, folks. Come on. Really? You think these people are going to save you? They're going to make a decision that isn't better for their pocketbook than you? Challenge that belief system because it is broken. You're
Or they're
shaking your head,
not
yes.
gonna concede to the mob,
Right.
and they're
So
not
you
worried about being a one-term whatever.
so we were just sent we're going to the South Sound Sustainability Festival for our fourth straight year. I went once pre-COVID, so we've been there 5 times. Um, they ask us what question we have for the youth that are there because there's a passport thing that they have to answer, and our question's always the same every year. What are the first 3 words of the U.S. Constitution?
Mm. Are
Now,
you finding
when I talk to an adult, okay, Marwan, answer the question. What are the first 3 words of the U.S. Constitution?
we the people?
Right. So when adults hear that, they start talking about all the things wrong with the Constitution, how it hasn't changed everything else. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's back up a minute. The U.S. Constitution has a process of change. It's called the amendment system.
Mm.
Okay. The fact that it hasn't changed isn't about the Constitution's inability to change. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that document. What's wrong is that we have a professional political process within our government that we've allowed to let happen. We have people that are in office forever, which was never visioned by the forefathers. And we have a lot of breakage within the checks and balances system. We've allowed things to slide sideways. And we, the people, have to get off our butts and push it back and get the amendments done that will take care of the problems. And so we, the people, are puzzle pieces that have to come together and have these conversations locally and then build up through a democratic system until we can find priorities and agreements that we need to have. And for that to ever happen, we have to start challenging our belief systems and come together.
Man, what a task to change. It's interesting you're saying that. And I think we both believe that government is going to be changed from the bottom up. Is that a fair assessment?
It's the only way it's going to be changed. And I don't believe in one right way or one only way, but within our current system, we have an opportunity to right the wrongs that have been done to the Constitution and to our political representation. And it should not come from a revolution. It should come from building community and relationships and having discussions and setting priorities and working together to push the change, because that's the way our system's set up.
And let me say this, and I am going to write a letter to our local city council, and our current council frustrates the hell out of me because uh, they're not cowards. I think the action that they do is cowardly. So I want to be clear on that. I'm not saying that they are bad.
And
Uh,
thank you for doing that, because too few people make that differentiation.
in that regard, most folks that have any kind of political chops understand that the power is with the local people, right? And it pushes upward. And so when folks come through, there was a declaration or a public comment that was pushed through, and it doesn't matter what the comment is. So I'm not even going to talk about what it is because that's not the point. What is said is, well, that is a global issue. That's not a city issue. Therefore, ergo, it's not our business. But if that means that we're sending money or we're going to be viewed in a certain way on the geopolitical forum, then that does affect us here locally, right? Because that means if we're sending billions of dollars for whatever reason, right? Aid, war, special interest, whatever, that means we don't have money to address our drug issues, our housing costs, and XYZ, right? And so it does affect us, and you should make a stance and have a position on that, because that voice collectively, the city of Bremerton, the city of Port Orchard, the city of San Francisco, the city of Colorado, all pushing together does make that change, right? But if you're not going to make a stand on it, it's like, oh no, it's not our place. That's not what we do.
Yeah, I'm going to completely blank this, and this is going to be a few minutes of statement here. But there was a movement in one of the northern states, Michigan perhaps, during the primary system, saying that,
I said Colorado as the state, not the city. I meant the city. I was trying to name cities.
So they had this movement during the primaries where they were undecided, and it was putting pressure on President Biden to do something about Gaza and Israel, and that mitigated some of what he was going to do and changed how the approach was. So it was powerful if the cities come together and start doing that. But again, this Bremerton City Council. Okay, back to the belief system. They believe that it would be a very difficult task to have a conversation and come to a consensus and still stay elected. And they're probably right, because people here are an interesting bag. And I've said that, I don't know if I've actually ever said this on the show, but one of the reasons the Kitsap Resiliency Project is happening here is because if we can do it here, it can be done anywhere. We have such a series of challenges, starting with people who don't want to get out of their own way, and a political system here that is ineffectual in the extreme, and favors some neighborhoods over others. I mean, it's an interesting place. But I can see where they're coming from, saying it's a global issue. But even so, let's go back to the rents and the money that can come down to affect rents, and we the people.
Shout out, Don. It can be done here. Hit the horn.
I didn't say I couldn't. I said it's just tough. And tough is what we do. So that's why we do what we do. So the rent situation, and maybe you can explain this to me because I'm going to take this somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But we have this building that just finished being built between the pawn shop and the Cooper Fuel on 303.
Okay.
Across from the apartment complex. It's right across from the Mayfair Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
It was designated to be an at-risk youth facility, and suddenly it's being rented for $2,000 a unit, and no one's talking about at-risk youth.
Really?
So I want to know, as we the people, I the person want to know how it shifted from one thing to another with nobody coming down on them about that. And apparently, from conversations I've had recently, and I haven't had time to do the research, there are several construction projects that were scheduled for low income to affordable housing. That suddenly, when they were finished, they said, "Okay, now that we've got this built, we got all our permitting done, we're going to sell these things and rent these things for the highest price we can get out of them."
Mm.
So, how does that continue to happen if we're talking about city council? How is it that these things happen? When I lived in Gig Harbor, the Russell Foundation built a brand new building right down on the waterfront, and everybody's going, "That's against code. We're not allowed to build on the waterfront. It's historic waterfront. No new construction was supposed to happen." I said, "Follow the money and see who signed the approvals on that," because you're right. It is against code and against the all agreements in Gig Harbor. Yet the Russell Foundation has a brand new building on the waterfront. How did that happen? Well, you need to go find out who signed the dotted line and how much money they got to sign on the bottom line, because that's what happened. In Bremerton, when all of these housing, I don't even think there's somebody being paid off. I think that they just know that they're oh God, I'm going to use a term here, feckless city council and public works and permitting group won't do a damn thing about it once they do it. So they got away with it. They continue to get away with it because there's no enforcement capability within the city of Bremerton and apparently the county.
You know, that's one thing, you know, and just to go back, when I said too bad, and what I mean by that is then you're no longer doing the will of the people, right? If you're not willing to bring forward what the people are saying they want to have brought forward, and you're like, "Oh, no, I can't do that," then that's no longer the will. If you're a one-term person, then that means that that's not the will. So someone else should come in, whether we like it or not. In regards to housing and building, that is another piece of consternation for me. They just had their goals, and shout out to Jane Robolowski. You know, she comes on to the Conduit and talks, and I asked her to go forward and ask some questions about cutting those tax breaks and not doing 20% affordable housing, right? You've got 5 units. That means one of those 5 units is affordable, and we put affordable in quotes, right? So we know that we are strapped nationwide for what is truly affordable housing. But these folks, and I'm not just talking about our city council, are just so dead set on doing the same thing the same way as always. Well, we can't get a developer in here to build, and who's going to do that?
BS.
That's not the job of the city. But even if you thought that's what, and I agree with you, I do think that's BS. We have to think out of the box. So what would we do if there was an earthquake and everything was torn down? We'd pull together as a group of people. We would go and get the materials out of Lowe's or Home Depot or anywhere else. We would build structures. We would use the people that had the knowledge base to put in the electricity and the plumbing, and we would galvanize around each other and build. So that's what we need to do. We can do it. We don't need a developer to come outside. We own the land. Go ahead and say, you know what? We've got local people here. We've got our carpenters. We've got our general contractors. We have all these folks. We have a bunch of people that need skills, that need jobs. We're going to train these folks. We can partner with the college, build something with them so they have some kind of certification so they can take that on as they go on the other side and build our own housing and set the price of what we're going to do. So it's When COVID happened, oh, we can lock down the country and we can start teaching people by Zoom. When we're forced into it, we can do it. Why not have the temerity and the power to say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and fix it ourselves. Hold my beer, we'll handle it. Don said, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is called insanity. Facts, right? But that's something that we can do. And you know what? It may not be perfect, but we already have Habitat for Humanity that shows that model on a small scale works.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
why, right?
Well, and again, it's we the people who will make that work. So let's start talking. Let's get that together. And by the way, the last time the first time I ever watched a video that said "Hold my beer and watch this," a guy lit a skyrocket off out of his crack and burned the shit out of himself who was traveling away with an ambulance.
Well, I don't plan on doing that. But, you know. But yeah, literally, we need to do something radical. And instead, more and more lives are being lost. Folks are falling more and more into despair. Everyone they're not born,
Let's just do a 1-to-1 equals 2 here.
Sure.
Overpriced housing. I'm sure somebody will argue overpriced, but it is my belief that pricing is the housing prices is too high. And plus, homelessness equate equally. You can say drugs and everything else and craziness and everything else, but that starts with people can afford to live.
Yeah.
It's just it's simple.
I mean, that's facts. I agree.
Yeah. So let's change that.
But those things will come as a result of not having hope, feeling like I'm a failure as a parent, and now we're unhoused, we're couch surfing, we're sleeping in our car, I'm coping through alcohol or prescription meds or illegal meds,
and wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had something, some means, some way to start supporting ourselves locally to make that happen? Hold on just a second. I think I may have that thing here. And I think it might actually be the word of the week.
Oh, there's a word of the week?
There is a word of the week.
Give it to me.
There it is.
Oh, community. I saw the word of the week already. I'm dismayed.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So community, this is the means by which we support each other and keep other people from falling into that despair and becoming a downward spiral into homelessness and lack of care. Community is the way in which we rebuild the foundation to keep that from happening altogether so we can start healing. Community is the way that we support each other before crisis happens and build capacity so when things happen, we are able to continue to thrive.
Look, and let me say,
no,
if you are the type person, if you're the type person that believes, you know what, not my monkey, not my circus, I went to school, I did everything right, I got my job, I take care of my family, I don't break the law, folks need to pull themselves up and, not from the bootstraps, but if they try hard, they can be successful. Even if that's what you believe, you are going to pay either way. Either you're going to pay on the front end or on the back end. So instead of paying for dealing with the increase in crime and drugs and alcohol and all the ills of society, why not invest in those folks so that we can minimize that and people are all thriving together, right? You're going to pay one way or the other. And it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game because you gave a little bit of yourself in a way. It's like, I don't really want to have to do it this way. So maybe I've got $1,000 and they have 500 versus I have 1,000 and they have 750, right? They're still not going to catch up to you. But at the end of the day, your kids are going to be safer. You're going to be safer. You're going to be able to do the things that you want to do.
But that's a competitive model. But we would really love to see you cooperate, saying, "Hey, I have 750, or I have $1,000. You have 750, but it's going to cost you $900 to get your car fixed. Here's $150 to get your car fixed."
I'm not even saying that. That's what you're saying. What I'm saying is you have to meet people where they're at. And
Right.
there are people that are like, you know what? I'm one, right? I was born into foster care, right? My mom gave me away when I was born. I didn't even spend a year with her. So I could go through life and be like, you know what? You know, forget society. They didn't care about me, whatever. I'm just doing me, right? I'm about getting the bag and that's it. I'm doing my thing. Good luck, y'all. My life was tough. Figure it out. But I know if I think that way, at the other end of it, I'm still going to have to deal with it. On an Easter Sunday, 2 blocks away at the 7-Eleven that I take my daughter in, there's a deceased person in the street. I don't know how many people know that or if that affects them. Did they know that person? The person who committed that heinous crime. You know, these are people that we fed. These are people that we take care of. These are people at the end of the day. And how tragic is it? And it's right here, but we still act like this is in Chicago or New York, and it's right goddamn here.
Yeah,
It's
no,
so frustrating.
I actually drove by that on Sunday. Yeah, no, the roadblocks and everything. I was going, what's a roadblock? And I found out what it was about. And I'm going, holy mount, you just wow, just wow.
Still not enough, right? It's
Yeah.
like, hey, summer's coming. Let me get on the boat. Oh, it's March Madness. Even from the most self-centered standpoint, it's still more of a benefit added to you and to your family. And hopefully we can move you on this of the spectrum of community.
Yeah.
But just trying to meet people where they're at.
But you know, I'm finding more and more people that are ready to start embracing community. They just need help doing it. So, you know.
Thank you, Don. R.I.P. Philip Pratt.
Oh, okay. So I saw her name come up, but I didn't actually see what she wrote because it disappeared under.
Oh no, we've been talking about it the whole time. You're caught up. You're caught up.
Okay, cool. I know my chat just stopped doing its thing for a while for whatever reason. All right, so as we come up to, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and aren't they all? That belief systems. If you believe you have to compete, why don't you take a good long look at that belief? What are you competing for? What are you competing against? What does it benefit you? I've been finding myself saying this lately when I've been driving and I've been on the road an awful lot. When somebody whips by you and races up to the light and you end up pulling up right next to them, is there some invisible scoreboard somewhere I don't know about where they get an extra point for being a dick? For being in a hurry, by risking everyone's lives. What is the reward you get for cutting somebody off, for competing with somebody, even when they're not competing with you? What's the juice you get from that?
Well, you know what?
Look at that belief system.
Let's look at it from a humanistic standpoint. What is the anxiety and the stress that's going through that person that is their behavior? What's going on in their life? That in a time when we have the most technology, we say life is the easiest that it's ever been for human beings, that this is the space that we're in, that we're, mashing on the gas from light to light, that we're cursing people out, that there's such thing as road rage, right? Why are we so bent out of shape? We're in the richest, the richest country in the history of mankind. You hear me say it all the time, right?
For the richest country in the world.
But we're so wound
for all the wound up we are about being in competition with one another and winning, we're doing worse every year than we were doing the year before.
So what I would say is, to answer your question about the belief system, I started off with COVID, and we went into social media. The biggest one is you are powerful and we are even more powerful together. That is one that
That's an absolute. That is a shared belief between us.
Mm-hmm.
We are powerful, but we are more powerful together.
And realize,
if you doubt that, go back and look at several of the tipping points and puzzle pieces and see the conversations we have.
Yeah,
we are two very powerful people that work together to get a message to you about how you can work together.
Man, have you not seen these traps? Have you not seen these deltoids? Do I need to? No, okay. We ain't got time for that. That's a different show.
He's pulling his guns. Oh,
no. That's on Patreon. It's $5 for that. Ooh, I need to get OnlyFans. That's another show too. Wow, Mark, you can't say those thoughts out loud.
No, yeah.
All right,
But,
well, good.
but pictures will be up on Patreon. Oh wait, no, Patreon doesn't allow those kind of pictures anymore.
Oh yeah, that's right. Look for the feed pics. All right,
look,
so give us your final
look for
word.
look like for the the Marwan Cameron game on stream.
Oh,
there you go.
Hey, there you go. Don't play around. You might see something show up here in a little bit.
Yeah, so just so you know, he's got game.
Oh boy. Mm-hmm. Give us the final word, Mark, because this is going into the gutter quick.
Oh. We have our moments. So I wanted to say happy birthday to Terry. Her birthday is tomorrow.
All right.
For those of you who don't know, Terry is my partner. She's on the board of directors with us. And she is kicking Marwan's butt to read his email, so he knows that there's a board meeting tomorrow night.
When's that?
4 o'clock at Cups.
All right, I'll do what I can.
Okay.
Yes, I'll try to be there.
And the final word of the day is let's work together. You know, there's so many times I feel challenged by the copyright laws, because there are some moments here that Marwan and I have that would just do so much better if we could put some musical accompaniment up. Because between the two of us, we have an encyclopedic knowledge of music from the 60s, actually 50s and 40s on, that some of those songs would just be perfect for this moment.
Mm-hmm.
But copyright strikes are real.
I'm so in love with you, 'cause you make me feel so brand new.
I didn't know you felt that way. All right. So that's another Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. We have 2 more scheduled out, and I'm going to be doing some work to figure out the ones after that.
I like it. And we will be back at 5 p.m., 5:30 for City Council, as we always broadcast it on Wednesdays. Again, this is where we, the people, mean the most. Last Wednesday, they spoke about it with study session, and they were talking about the fact that, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, but people will come down as a group and say, hey, this is what we believe. And unfortunately, that's 15 people. That's their belief. That's their group. But if there's no counterpoint to that, then they say, well, we heard from the people and we're going to do the will of the people. They can't ignore it, right? If that's what came in. So, you got to make
imagine if we had a 100-piece puzzle come together to come out and talk to them.
And it doesn't have to be one person, right? In your little small groups, we can make bigger groups. And this one can go the first Wednesday of the month. And this one goes on the second Wednesday. And we just report back. And there's always someone there to speak and give our thoughts and efforts and desires of how we want our city to be, right? And we want our city to be loving, neighborly.
We present the people that we're. I have a group of 20 people. I have a group of 20 people to be talking next week, and these are the things we want to see happen.
All right, and with that, have a good day. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. For Mark Bortray Frost, I am Marwan Cameron. This is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. You're watching the Conduit Podcast Network. Stay tuned for Marwan Cameron's OnlyFans. Until next time, y'all. Have a good one.